if you took the Mexican drug cartels and turned them upside down and shook them, that President Lopez Obrador would fall out of their pockets?
Well, I'll leave the metaphor aside. The department has said that we do not have an investigation of the President of Mexico.
Do you think President of Mexico is our friend?
We need cooperation from Mexico. Mexico has been somewhat cooperative with respect to our fight against the cartels, not as helpful as I wish they were, but without their cooperation, we can't be successful in destroying the cartels.
Why wouldn't the president go to President Lopez Obrador and say, no offense, but the fentanyl problem is killing Americans?
Okay, did you just see that? Because I need a second. What you just watched is Senator John Kennedy doing what very few people in that hearing room had the guts to do, and that is holding one of the most powerful law enforcement officials in the country actually accountable. No fluff, no grandstanding, just straight hard questions that the American people deserve answers to. Now, I've watched a lot of congressional hearings, and most of them are honestly a waste of time. Politicians talking in circles, dodging questions, filibustering their own points. But Kennedy came prepared. He came with receipts. He came with a calculator. And he delivered it all with that Louisiana drawl that somehow manages to sound both completely friendly and absolutely devastating at the same time. What I love about him is he doesn't come across as mean. He comes across as the sharp uncle who's done his homework and will not let you leave the table until you give him a straight answer. And Merrick Garland, the Attorney General of the United States, struggled to give him one. We're going to watch the full video now, and then I'll break down every moment for you because there is a lot to unpack, especially the Hunter Biden section at the end. Trust me, stick around for that. If you're new here, hit subscribe because this is exactly the kind of content we do. Let's get into it.
Nice to see you again. Thank you for being here. Your current budget, by my calculations, is $48.3 billion. Is that right?
The budget request is for $37.8 billion, the FY25 budget, and that would constitute a 3.5% increase over.
But with mandatory spending, your budget's 48.3. Is that right?
I don't have the number for including mandatory, but I'll certainly be able to get back to you for that.
Well, let's take out mandatory.
Yeah.
Your discretionary budget right now is $37.8 billion.
The FY25 request is for 37.8.
That's not what I'm asking.
I'm sorry?
What's your current budget?
Well, it's 3.5% less than that, so I can take out my calculator and do the math, but I don't have it in front of me.
All right, well, let me put it another way. You're asking for an extra $467 million, is that right?
In the increased amount of money that we're asking for, that's approximately right, yes.
Okay. To your knowledge, in the past, let's say 40 years, has the Department of Justice ever come before Congress and said, we don't need any more? We're going to make it with what we've got in light of the fiscal circumstances in the country?
I normally wouldn't want to speculate, but in this case, I can't imagine that the Department of Justice, facing increasing threats every year, violent crime, threats to our national security, drug trafficking threats, would...
Is that a no?
I don't know the answer, but I think it would be surprising if the department ever asked for less money. I think that would be not responsible.
You talked in a little bit in your testimony, General, about guns, and you've been very outspoken about the need for more gun control. With respect, and if you don't mind me asking, do you own a gun?
I don't.
Okay. Have you ever fired a gun?
Many times.
Okay. Do you have 24-hour security?
I do.
Okay. Let me ask you about fentanyl, because that's a huge problem, and I know you're worried about it, as are we. And we've, of course, got a problem with the precursor chemicals coming into Mexico to the Mexican cartels who manufacture the fentanyl and send it into the United States. Isn't a big part of the problem that if you took the Mexican drug cartels and turned them upside down and shook them, that President Lopez Obrador would fall out of their pockets?
Well, I'll leave the metaphor aside. The department has said that we do not have an investigation of the President of Mexico.
Do you think President of Mexico is our friend?
We need cooperation from Mexico. Mexico has been somewhat cooperative with respect to our fight against the cartels, not as helpful as I wish they were, but without their cooperation, we can't be successful in destroying the cartels.
Why wouldn't the president go to President Lopez Obrador and say, no offense, but the fentanyl problem is killing Americans. The illegal immigration problem is hurting Americans. If you don't cooperate with us, and he clearly hasn't been, and he's not afraid of us, we're going to implement tariffs on Mexico until you do.
I think there are many ways to encourage cooperation from another country.
But that would do it, wouldn't it?
I don't know whether that would do it or whether...
You don't think that would get his attention?
I am not a diplomat. I'm not a foreign affairs strategist. I know we need their support and cooperation.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that would be positive or negative.
So we just ask politely.
Well, we do more than that, but
Right.
considerably more than that.
Let me
I don't know the answer to your
Okay.
high-level
Let me ask you one last
strategy
question in my 14 seconds. I've been dying to ask you this question.
How long have you been dying to ask me this question?
Long time. Long time. Mr. Hunter Biden did not pay taxes on $1 million in 2014 and 2015. And he deducted payments from his income tax for personal expenses when he did file. For hookers, for a Lamborghini, for strip clubs, for sex clubs, for porn website memberships. Why did the Department of Justice let the statute of limitations run?
As you well know, Senator.
So you can't prosecute?
As you well know, Senator, that investigation is being conducted by Mr. Weiss, who was appointed by President Trump to be the U.S. Attorney in Delaware. Much of the investigation you're talking about occurred during the previous administration under Mr. Weiss. Mr. Weiss has continued his investigations. He's now a special counsel. He will issue a report which
So
will
are you
explain
saying it's
those...
Trump's fault?
Which will explain... No, I don't know whether there's fault or not. Mr. Weiss will explain this in his report.
But we can't. Mr. Hunter Biden walks free on not paying taxes on $1 million from 2014 and 15 because the Department of Justice let it happen, right?
Again, I'm not going to comment on decisions made in a pending investigation. In the end, Mr. Weiss will issue a report. I will provide the report to Congress. You will be able to question Mr. Weiss as to his reasoning, and he will be able to defend his reasoning.
Would you come with Mr. Weiss when he does that?
I'm not going to know the intricacies of Mr. Weiss' investigation. There would be no point. It's Mr. Weiss who's responsible for this investigation.
But you were head of the Department of Justice.
Yes, and I've appointed him as special counsel so that he can independently investigate this matter.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Senator Kennedy. Senator Manchin.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you, Judge, for being here. I appreciate your service.
All right, we're back. Let me break this down. Starting with the budget exchange, which sounds dry, but is actually a great example of how Kennedy operates. He asks Garland a simple question. What is your current budget? The Attorney General of the United States, who oversees a $37 billion department, fumbles the answer. Kennedy has to reframe the question 3 times just to get something usable out of him. But the deeper point Kennedy was making is this. Has the DOJ ever once come to Congress in 40 years and said, we're fine, we don't need more money? The answer is no, and Kennedy knew that. He was making the case that government agencies have a permanent appetite for more taxpayer money, regardless of their actual performance. That is a conversation worth having. Then we get to guns. Kennedy asks 3 quick questions. Do you own a gun? Have you ever fired one? Do you have 24-hour security? He never lectures. He never moralizes. He just lets those answers sit there. And what he's pointing at, without saying it directly, is the disconnect between officials who are protected around the clock and ordinary Americans who depend on their own means for protection. You can agree or disagree with that position, but the observation itself is completely fair. Then we get to fentanyl, and this is where Kennedy turns up the heat. That line about shaking the cartels upside down until Lopez Obrador falls out of their pockets, that's Kennedy being Kennedy. But underneath the humor is a serious allegation that the Mexican government has deep ties to the very cartels killing tens of thousands of Americans every year. Garland responds by saying the DOJ has no investigation into the Mexican president. Kennedy then asks a pretty direct question. Is Mexico our friend? And Garland's answer, somewhat cooperative, not as helpful as I'd like, is diplomatic language for not really. Kennedy pushes for tariffs as leverage. Garland says he's not a diplomat. Okay, fair, but someone needs to be pushing harder on this, and it clearly isn't happening. And then we get to Hunter Biden, which Kennedy said he'd been waiting a long time to ask about. He lays it out plainly. Hunter Biden allegedly didn't pay taxes on $1 million of income in 2014 and 2015. And when he did eventually file, he allegedly deducted personal expenses as business costs, including a Lamborghini, strip clubs, and adult websites. The statute of limitations on some of those charges has now run out, meaning prosecution may no longer even be possible. Kennedy's question is simple. Why did the DOJ let that happen? Garland's answer, repeated several times, is essentially, ask David Weiss. Weiss was appointed by Trump. He's now a special counsel. He'll issue a report. And look, Garland is technically correct that Weiss runs an independent investigation. But Kennedy's point lands anyway. You are the head of the Department of Justice. You cannot appoint someone, call it independent, and then have zero accountability for how it turns out. And when Kennedy asked if Garland would appear alongside Weiss when he presents to Congress, the answer was no. If you're truly responsible for your department, why won't you stand beside the man you appointed and answer for the outcomes? Kennedy never raised his voice. He didn't name call. He just used his time, asked direct questions, and didn't let Garland escape with non-answers. He represented a lot of Americans who are genuinely frustrated that accountability seems to work differently depending on who you are. That is what congressional oversight is supposed to look like. Let me know in the comments what you thought. Did Garland give satisfactory answers? Was Kennedy out of line or right on the money? Drop a like if you enjoyed this, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one.